Welcome back to my GoldenEye 20th Anniversary Soundtrack Podcast. We're getting slowly but steadily towards the end. The next scene is going to be the one where Bond and Natalia drop back on the ground in the escape pod, or just the cockpit of the Tiger helicopter. They get out, and of course then a lot of military personnel and cars come up into the scene. That's where I went for a little dramatic orchestral suite, together with Eric Serra, instruments again, like the deep choir stuff and the rum and stuff like that, just along with a good portion of orchestra. And then just like in the movie, as they enter the interrogation room, once the door closes, the cue comes to its end. So door closes and then the music stops. And so now, towards the end of the scene of the movie where Natalia and Bond, talk together, and Natalia tells Bond how she's connected with Sevenaya, there comes this nice, reprise of the sad suite that came beforehand in the Sevenaya scenes. And then Mishkin enters, and the scene ends. The next one is called Archives. And it starts, of course, with Mishkin, Bond, Natalia sitting at a table with the famous interrogation and the famous quotes, chit-chat and all that kind of stuff. And as the scene builds up, in the original soundtrack, there's nothing really there. There's no music. But again, it was a certain place that just I felt music wouldn't be wrong here. I'm absolutely against, putting too much music into movie, because it can get old hearing and overloaded very quickly. It's really like a thin line to score a movie. But as Ourumov enters and as the situation starts to heat up, I thought it would be nice to have some music, especially when Ourumov shoots Mishkin and the guard. And then I did really something, like really going full throttle with music for a short time. Go silent again as Ourumov is talking. Because, when there's silent dialogue or also big sound effects, you should never try to compete with it with the music. You should be silent there as well. And yeah, then comes the scene where Pierce Brosnan fights his way out. This was really, again, such a pain in the ass, mainly because of the triangle, which was very loud again and very prominent in the mix. But, in the original video, rescore video, you could hear the triangle, you could hear it, I couldn't filter it out, just basically. And the action cue there, you can hear this cue is quite heavy with the trumpets. And that is mainly because when I started to work on that scene, I just got myself a new digital library with just the whole brass section of an orchestra that was Cinebrass. And it was really a revelation. I mean, it was really cool to get that, and so I used it quite a bit in that scene. But I think it fitted. The whole build-up now is quite orchestral. Of course, that's another thing, It worked in GoldenEye, but basically you have that whole synthesizer soundtrack, except a few, like the Love Suite and stuff like that. To my surprise, and to most people, the John Altman version of the Archive and the Tank Chase worked. And that is quite unusual, I think, because you have that whole synthesizer soundtrack, and suddenly one of the main action sequences, you have a pure orchestra recording. And it worked quite well, but I've tried to always to be a little, not to go from one extreme to another, just on my take on making the soundtrack. And yeah, I followed a little bit the paths of John Altman, because his score to the archive escape scene and the tank chase that we'll talk about later was just amazing in my ears. It was just, and I was in a James Bond orchestra concert a few months ago, and they played that St. Petersburg, what was it, tank drive through St. Petersburg. They played it live and had the movie played on a big screen, and that was just, I mean, the piece from John Altman is amazing to listen on CD already. But if you hear a live orchestra perform it, that is just, and you hear so many details, and it's so perfectly made. And, I try to walk on these paths a little bit, because as Oromov and his soldiers enter the lower floor of the archives, you can hear a little bit of synth stuff going on. And then as the book drops, pang, you can hear a little cymbal. And then Oromov turns around and boom, Bond. And yeah, the cue that I build up there is really very reminiscent of John Altman's version, which was quite intended, because I thought that was just so perfectly done. And it just the music that fits that scene. Bond fleeing, running around with a certain coolness, and it's almost like a comic a little bit, because usually if it wouldn't be James Bond, you would add really dark, intensive music. But since it's Bond, it has a little bit of tongue-in-cheek elements, and it's quite lighthearted. And then there's a break where Bond shoots the piton out of the belt, and then as he swings through the library on that rope, the big Bond theme, then added a little bit of electric guitar to give it another dimension. And then he's outside running to the tank, and the music slowly but steadily starts to fade out. Okay, that was a lot of information. I hope you liked it. In the next part of the podcast, we're going to look at the tank chase scene, and we're going to be influenced by some Cuban rhythms. So stay tuned. Hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye bye, take care.